Imagine a mind so powerful it could just see the hidden patterns of the universe, patterns no one else could. A mind that came from basically nowhere to completely revolutionize mathematics. Well, that's the story of Srinivasa Ramanujan, and it's a deep dive into what genius really is.
And this right here is the big mystery, isn't it? How did a poor clerk from a small town in India with zero higher education come up with theorems so brilliant, so advanced, that mathematicians are still trying to unpack them a century later? To even begin to understand the miracle of his mind, we have to go back to the beginning. And his beginning was a world away from the fancy halls of Cambridge. Okay, so Ramanujan's early life was driven by one thing, and one thing only: math. His obsession was so total that he failed pretty much every other subject. It actually cost him a college scholarship and plunged him into poverty. His only real teacher was this one dense book of formulas, but he didn't just study it. He used it as a launchpad for his own completely original ideas. Now, let that sink in for a second. Working completely alone, with just one book and his gut instincts, he basically reinvented a century of brilliant Western mathematics. But here's the kicker: he didn't stop there. He started to leap far, far beyond it. Ramanujan knew he was onto something huge, but he needed someone in the world to see it, to understand it. So he took a wild shot in the dark, a shot that would change math forever. Picture this. A letter shows up on the desk of G.H. Hardy, who's basically a rock star mathematician at the time. It's packed with pages and pages of these crazy-looking theorems, with no proofs, no explanation, nothing. Hardy's first thought: this is junk mail. He was used to getting letters from crackpots, and this just looked too weird, too fantastical to be real. He was convinced it was some kind of elaborate prank, and frankly, he was annoyed. But then, as Hardy and his colleague Littlewood started to actually look at the formulas, that irritation turned into pure, jaw-dropping astonishment. They realized this wasn't fraud. It was profound. These formulas, he said, just had to be true, because nobody could possibly have the imagination to just make them up. So what was in that letter that was so mind-blowing? Well, to get Ramanujan, you have to understand that numbers weren't just abstract things to him. They were personal. As his colleague famously said, every positive integer was one of his personal friends. For example, he was obsessed with something called partitions. It sounds complex, but it's a pretty simple idea. Just ask yourself, how many different ways can you break down the number 4 into smaller whole numbers? As you see here, there are 5 ways. Easy enough. But as the numbers get bigger, the number of ways explodes into chaos. And Ramanujan saw these incredible, hidden patterns in that chaos that nobody else could. But really, nothing shows his friendship with numbers better than this one famous story. So Hardy is visiting a sick Ramanujan in the hospital. He's trying to make small talk, and he mentions the number of the taxi he just took. To Hardy, it was just a number: 1729. A boring one at that. But to Ramanujan, even sick in bed, it was an old friend with a cool secret. Without missing a beat, Ramanujan replied, "No, it is a very interesting number. It is the smallest number expressible as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways." Just like that. Off the top of his head. This one little comment just shows you the incredible depth of how he saw the world. And this intuitive power, this was what made him so revolutionary. But it also caused a huge clash with the very rigid, proof-obsessed world of Western mathematics he was entering. This quote really gets to the heart of it. Ramanujan just didn't think like other mathematicians. He wasn't building logical arguments step by step by step. For him, the answers just arrived. They came to him in flashes of insight, like visions. He was discovering profound truths that other people would then spend years trying to prove were correct. Now, his time in England was an explosion of creativity, but it was also incredibly difficult for him. He was dealing with intense culture shock, the cold English weather, and it was nearly impossible for him to maintain his strict vegetarian diet, especially during a war. All this isolation and malnutrition just devastated his health. So even though his life was cut tragically short, his work wasn't just some brief flash of brilliance. No, it was more like a supernova that is still, to this day, lighting up brand new frontiers of science. He left behind these notebooks filled with over 3,000 theorems and formulas, with little to no explanation. It's this incredible intellectual treasure chest that mathematicians are still working through, still trying to understand. And this is where the story gets absolutely wild. The completely abstract, almost spiritual ideas that he dreamed up 100 years ago, they are now essential, practical tools that power our modern world. I mean, his influence today is just staggering. We're talking about everything from how supercomputers work, to the security of the internet, to how we understand black holes and even string theory. His fingerprints are everywhere. So, let's make this real. You know those super fast formulas used to calculate pi to trillions of digits to stress test supercomputers? Many of those are his. His work on what are called modular forms is now a key part of the cryptography that keeps our online lives secure. And his Mach theta functions, ideas he wrote down in the last year of his life, so strange that nobody understood them for decades, they're now being used by physicists to calculate the properties of black holes. It's just unbelievable. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Ramanujan's story is this incredible reminder that genius doesn't always follow the rules. It doesn't always show up where you expect it. It can be raw, intuitive, and unstructured. He saw the world in a way no one else did, and that's precisely why he changed it. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really important question. His genius was almost dismissed, almost thrown in the trash because it looked weird. It just makes you wonder, how much true brilliance is out there right now that we're overlooking simply because it doesn't fit the mold we expect?